Hello everybody! The Music Fan is back, bringing smiles to the faces, knowledge to the people, and most importantly, music to the masses. And I am super excited to be back recording videos for you guys. Now you might be wondering, where the heck have I been all this time? I thought I was going to be putting out some 5-minute theories here and there in January. Well, let me tell you exactly what I've been doing. Over the last, 30 days, I've probably listened to about 80 or 90 CDs. Now, you might be wondering why the heck I've been doing that. And, well, here's the answer. Tonight and up until next Sunday, I'm going to be putting out my top 50 albums of 2018. Yes, that time is back. I'm super excited to do it. It's my Christmas time. All those great things wrapped into one. It's a long process. I've listened to a lot of CDs. I've been listening to old favorites from last year as well as some newer ones. If you were looking for a place to figure out where all the best of the best albums, according to all the music critics out there, check out albumoftheyear.com. They have an aggregate for 2018, and that's where I got a lot of the ones I haven't listened to. And I did find a lot of good stuff. Some that will definitely be in the top 50, but since next Sunday is the Grammy Awards, basically the way of closing out the music from 2018, I thought what better time to get this done than by doing it now. So from Friday, which is today, until next Sunday, I'll be putting out 10 videos. Now you might be asking, Kyle, why the heck are you doing that? Why do you need so many videos? Well, here's the reason. Tonight, I am doing mostly my guidelines of how I pick these albums, as well as some honorable mentions, because there was a lot of good albums this year, and I want to be able to tell you about all of them. Then, from Saturday until Tuesday, I'm going to be doing numbers 50 through 21 in 4 videos, so 10 each. And then, why 5 more? Well, that's the big news. I didn't get to work with Josh this year on my top 10. I wasn't in New York. He wasn't around. So I found the next best person. A good friend of mine has joined me for the top 10 list. And I'm not going to reveal who they are, but I will just say that their music taste is as eclectic as mine is, and their knowledge and the way that they approach music listening fits very similar to me. We bounce off each other very well, so it's going to be really fun. I've already recorded this video with them, so that will be out from Wednesday to Sunday of the Grammys. But the reason for me having to do that is because when we recorded, there was about an hour and a half's worth of material. Even if I condense it, that's still going to be a lot. So I'm going to be putting out in 5 different parts, going from 2 each every day. So that way you can get all the material without having to watch an hour and a half video. I am freaking excited for this. I love this time of year. I love being able to go through all this, and I hope that you guys watch every single one of these because I've put a lot of time into that. So from there, let me talk quickly about some of the guidelines that I do with this list, just so that I can have you guys understand, and if you ever need to come back to this, definitely check it out. So number 1, the first thing is, this is my opinion. That's the biggest thing. I've listened to about 150 albums this year, and there are some that I didn't even get to listen to that I've wanted to. I just didn't have the time for it. I'll definitely check them out later, and if I find them interesting, I might do an Are You In on it at some point in time. But these are my opinions and mine alone. I have a certain taste, and I have certain qualities into what I want to listen to. So, bearing that in mind, if you want to talk about your favorite top 10, go right ahead. You can put it in the comments. If you want to disagree, of course, do so. You have all the right. All I just ask is that you are constructive. Let me know what your favorite albums were. Or, hey, if this is the first video you're watching, there's a chance that these other albums are in my top 50 somewhere. You just have to be patient. So, please do that. Number 2. For me, basically, what I look for is something that I'm going to come back to, as well as something that's really interesting to me. If I find music to be very interesting or very challenging, I grasp onto that more than the pop nowadays. But at the same time, I do find some radio-friendly stuff interesting. So you might find something on here that might have some more musical merit to it, that's a little bit lower than something that is a little bit more pop radio friendly, and that just might be because it connects to me a little bit more than this other particular album. Not saying that either one is better or worse. Heck, you know, when you're getting down to it, one spot a piece isn't that far off, and there were a lot of times where I switch a lot of these around, and maybe later in time I would have something that's a little bit different in terms of an order. All these are great. That's why they're in the top 50. Bear that in mind. I kind of do a combination of everything, as well as, are the lyrics interesting? Is the music interesting? Is there a concept? Because usually a concept drags me more in than, you know, a bunch of love songs. Third, length does matter a little bit in this case. There are a couple of very acclaimed albums this year that to me didn't make it because of the length itself. Some of these are because there's only, you know, maybe 7 songs, and if one of the songs are bad, then it kind of just ruins the rest of the album. Not saying none of them aren't great, but 1/7 of an album is much more to come back from than 1/12 of an album or 1/10 of an album. So that's a reasoning behind it. And a couple of these examples, I would say Tierra Whack's Whack World, that to me misses out because, you know, it's a 15-minute CD, 15 tracks. That means it's 1 minute every song. So even though some of these songs might be interesting, I think it's more novelty than anything else, and I can't grasp onto that. 3 others that kind of miss the mark as well are 3 that you can kind of put together, that being Pusha T's Daytona, Kanye West's Ye, and Kid Cudi and Kanye West's album Kids See Ghosts. All 3 of these have gone pretty high remarks from a lot of album reviewers and a lot of the mainstream media. I personally don't like a lot of these. I think there are some interesting songs on some of them, but with them all being about 25 minutes at most and 7 tracks, first off, that doesn't really consider for me for an album. I see it more as an EP, even though they might, you know, market it as an LP. And because some of these songs aren't as interesting, it just leaves you like with 3 or 4 songs that might be good. So that is a problem for me. There is one more that actually fits this list, but I'm not going to say it just yet because it will be in my honorable mentions. The last thing that's really important to me, singles don't make an album. There are some very popular singles out there that have done really well, but that doesn't make the album itself interesting. The way I look at it is you wouldn't read a book for 1 chapter. You wouldn't watch a movie and only watch 5 minutes of it. Why are you basing an album off of its singles? And I understand this is the idea that, you know, we're in more of a singles era, and a lot of these singles are dropped earlier. It has to. It's basically like a trailer for a movie. But at the end of the day, you still watch the whole entire movie if you're interested in it, and you make a connection there. Just like if you listen to some singles, you listen to the whole entire album. So some CDs have gotten a lot of publicity because of their singles, and honestly, that doesn't cut it to me. So I'm looking at you, Astroworld. I'm also looking at you, Invasion of Privacy. I'm looking at you, Beer Bongs and Bentleys. I'm also looking at you, Scorpion. And I'm definitely looking at you, Man of the Woods. You get the heck out of here. You don't deserve to be in the breath of those 4, but you are. And what the hell are you doing here, Red Pill Blues? You aren't even from this year. I don't care if you're still getting some radio play. I don't care if your band is playing in the Super Bowl. You get the heck out of here. Okay? None of those deserve to be in the top 50 for me because they aren't interesting enough albums. So when it's all said and done, they are going to get a lot of attention at the Grammys, but to me, not worth the time. And finally, let me quickly dive into my honorable mentions. I got 20 more. 20 real quick ones I'm going to fly through that if you don't see it in the top 50, it's probably because it's in this honorable mention. There's a lot of really good stuff that just missed the cut or were on the edge of being in the top 50 at one point in time, but just fell through after adding more stuff into it. So 20 more, here we go. First one, Ariana Grande's Sweetener. An awesome pop album. I'm not a huge fan of pop, but she has done a fantastic job on this CD. The singles are really good, and for the most part, a really fun album. It just doesn't necessarily do it for me. But if you really like pop albums, this was actually one of the better ones this year. Next one, Dirty Projectors, Lamp Lit Pros. Now this was one that I had really high coming into the top 50 and think that it was actually going to make the cut. It actually slid very far. Not to say this isn't a good album. It's not as good as their previous one from 2017, but there are some really good songs on here. The first half is much better than the second half, though, and the second half itself has a lot of really weird and iffy ones that aren't as interesting to me, which is why it's not on there. Next, Arctic Monkeys, Tranquility, Base Hotel and Casino. At first, I did not really like this album, but after giving it another chance, I like the different sound that they have done on here. It works better with the vocals. I like the jazzy ideas on here. The problem for me is that it is very out there at times. The lyrics feel very meta, and there's some very weird instrumentations at times and arrangements. So if you didn't like any of the previous stuff, you might like this, but just so you know, if you are an Arctic Monkeys fan and haven't listened to any of these, it is going to feel very different. Next, Pentatonix P-Tex presents Top Pop Volume 1. It's a Pentatonix album. It's really, really good. You know, Pentatonix does very well, but again, it's not really any different from what they've done before. There's some really good arrangements on here, my favorite being Feel It Still. I really like what they do with it, but again, it's kind of niche, so it doesn't really fit with everything else, but again, not bad. Next, Vince Staples with FM. Now this is another one of these when I was talking about in length. I love Vince Staples. I really liked Big Fish Theory. It was one of my favorite albums from 2017. This one is a little bit too short, and the skits don't really work for me, but it's not a bad album. It's one of the better rap albums of the year for me. It's just, I wish it was a little bit longer, and this was one I didn't get to listen to as much. Maybe if I listened to it a couple more times, it would have been in the top 50. To me, it's just out. Next, we have a trio of kind of weird albums, that being Beach House's 7, Jack White's Boarding House Reach, and 9 Inch Nails' Bad Witch. All these are very atmospheric at times, or just weird in general. Least favorite one being Beach House 7. Not that's bad, it's very atmospheric, and there's a lot of beautiful arrangements on it, but to me, I just didn't grip to it as some of these other ones. Jack White's Boarding House Reach has some decent songs. I'm not been a huge Jack White fan as in terms of his solo work, but this is my favorite one of his, though it does get really weird at times. But I really like Corporation and Over. I think there's a lot of very interesting arrangements, but just ones that don't necessarily click with me. And then 9 Inch Nails' Bad Witch. I love 9 Inch Nails. I've loved them for years. Their last 2 EPs didn't really do much for me, and this basically is kind of an EP, though he does call it an LP. There's only 6 songs on here. That's another reason why it isn't as high, because some of the songs don't really hit their marks to me, but I really like the really heavy industrial sound. I also do like the songs where Trent Reznor actually plays tenor sax. I think it adds some really cool layerings. Also, he sounds really weird on this album, which is another reason why it is kind of dragged down in comparison. But hey, not a bad 9 Inch Nails, and probably one of the better ones over the last couple of years. Then we have Belos Bartok. I talked about this one around Halloween. This is one of the smaller bands. Actually, one of my friends from UMass is in this one. And it's the first album I listened to. I really enjoyed it. I think the quality is really good. I would love to see what they do next. This one just misses out because, you know, some of these songs aren't as interesting to me. But this is a hell of an album. And Crisco, if you're watching this, great job. I hope that you guys get even better. And who knows, you might just reach that top 50 next time. Also, just missing the cut, Black Veil Brides. Veil. Not as good as Rushing the Divine, but it's a nice ender to that story. It does get a little bit too anthemic at times, but overall, when I came back to it, I remember really enjoying it, and it just missed the cut for me. Next 2 are some instrumental albums. First one being Deadmau5, Where's the Drop, one of the last albums that I reviewed from last year. Really cool instrumental album. Made me really interested in seeing what the actual pieces sound like. But it's a little bit too long. It's a little bit too stagnant at times, but the building is really nice. If you want to hear what Deadmau5's music can sound like with an orchestra, really cool idea. Next is Curing Bin with Con Todo El Mundo. Hopefully I said both of those right? I have no clue. Now, this one is a little bit different. This one is more of a funky, chill band from Texas with trio, with bass, guitar, and drums. They have these mixtures of hip hop as well as these kind of more Middle Eastern and Eastern sounding arrangements. Really cool, really chill. If I listened to it again, I probably would have put it in my top 50, but not enough time with it. I think it's a really cool instrumental album though. Check it out when you can. Next is Idol's Joy as an Act of Resistance. This is one that I wish was better. I know a lot of people really enjoy this album, and the first song was fantastic. I really like Colossus. I really like the way that it built. It made me be thinking that like there could be a little bit more depth to punk rock, because I'm not the hugest punk rock fan. I think sometimes it gets a little bit too simplistic, even though I understand that's the idea when you're trying to do a political message. Colossus was a really cool song, and I only wish that that was the sound of the album. Unfortunately, at the end of that song, it goes back to regular punk. Not to say that it's not bad. I like a lot of the songs on there. A lot of the singles are fantastic. I like the ideas that are used on here, whether it's talking about toxic masculinity or making fun of making America great again. I think there's a lot of really cool songs on here. It just doesn't fit as well for me as some of these other albums, and it missed the cut. Next, we have MGMT, Little Dark Age. I really thought this was going to make the top 50. The first time around, I thought this was going to be really high. This was by far my favorite MGMT album, and I don't really like MGMT. The beginning half of this album is fantastic, with She Works Out Too Much, Little Dark Age, When You Die, Me and Michael, Time Spent Looking at My Phone, all fantastic songs. The only problem for me is the bottom half of the album is not as good, and I don't understand the tone. I can't tell if this band is trying to be tongue-in-cheek with some of these songs or if they're trying to be serious, and when that's the case, it just leaves a disconnect with me. And then the last song is very lackluster comparatively to the rest of the album. But still, a fantastic MGMT album, and if you love MGMT, you're gonna love this album. Alright, we got 5 more. Next being Tesseract Sonder, a very solid progressive album, but unfortunately for me, the problem that happens is, again, this is one with only 7 tracks, and I honestly can't remember some of them, even listening to it multiple times. The intro is great, the singles are fantastic, I love both of them, and this is my first Tesseract album. I'll definitely listen to more of it because of this album, but because I can't remember all of it, this is where it lands. Next is Gorillaz, The Now Now. I loved Humans. It was a fantastic album. It was one of my favorite albums of 2017. As if you watched me and Josh's video, you will clearly see that. I love the idea that it was incorporating. I love the world that it built. It reminded me a lot of Demon Days. This one is completely different. This one has very little in terms of guest artists. This is more one-off songs and mostly chill music, and beautiful ones at that at times. It's just, on the whole, it isn't as interesting, and there are some lackluster songs. But I love Idaho, I love Kansas, I love Trans, I love the first song on the album. Just really, really good stuff on here. Fireflies, and a lot of beautiful stuff that I'm not used to from Damon Albarn. But if you weren't as huge a fan of Humans, you might like Now Now if you like the more chill stuff. And then finally, I have 3 albums that missed the cut, probably only because I didn't get to listen to them as much. They were a little bit farther along in the game, and if I got another chance to listen to some of these, I would say that probably they would make the top 50. And these ones are actually pretty highly rated in the aggregate and by a lot of people. Those being The Internet, Hive Mind, Sophie, Oil of Every Pearl's Insides, and Miski's Be the Cowboy. The Internet, awesome funk, hip-hop CD, a lot of really interesting songs and a lot of really interesting takes on those genres. Fortunately, just missed the cut. Sophie, Oil of Every Pearl's Insides, another very interesting electronic album. Very hard-hitting, very industrial at times, but also very soft at other points in time. Very interesting arrangements, just not the whole entire album isn't as interesting to me overall. And then Be the Cowboy is highly reviewed. It's right behind Janelle Monáe's Dirty Computer when it comes to the aggregate. I don't necessarily see it as much. I think there's a lot of really, really interesting indie ideas on here, but I feel like with it being I believe, a 14 or 13 track CD and only being about 30 minutes in length, some of these ideas aren't fully fleshed out as much. If these ideas were fleshed out a little bit more, I think this would have been much higher on my list. But for now, it's number 51. So that is my time. Thank you so much for watching this first one. I know I crammed a lot into here. The next couple of videos aren't going to be as long, but I do appreciate you coming around for this. My throat is so dry right now, as you can probably hear. So I'm going to get some water before recording these next ones. But if you are interested in what I'm doing, of course, give this video a like. Share it with your friends. Comment on your favorite albums of the year, or even some of your least favorite albums. And, subscribe to my channel, ring that bell if, you really enjoy what I'm going to be doing and what I'm going to be bringing up over the next couple of days. Then please, I beg you, watch these and keep being up to date on it, because I am just cracking the surface. If these 20 just miss my cut, then the rest of the 50 are going to be really good. But you won't know until the next part when I go through 50 to 41. Until then, this is the Music Fan signing out.